Good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers first. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Bhavaswaha, Tatsavitra Vargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yo Naha Prachodayat, Asto Ma Sadgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, मृत्योर्मामृतं गम्य ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति 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 For the last 2 weeks we have been talking about very important topic, which is a topic of death. As we know, we don't die actually. What really dies is the body, the physical body. But we love this body so much. We even identify ourselves with this body. So that's why it's very hard to even talk about it. But this is a very important topic. Our bodies have died many, many times before, different bodies. Got to learn how to let it go peacefully, calmly. And there's an innate question. What remains after death? That means death of the body. And what becomes of the soul after the death of the body? Where does it go? Because spontaneously these questions, they arise in everybody's minds. That's why it's called that these questions are momentous questions which touch the hearts of everyone deeply. Thousands of years ago, people asked these questions. Today also, when people think about it, they have these questions. Let's look at what our seers in the Upanishads boldly declared, with emphasis on account of their intuitive realization about this subject. They said that there is one all-pervading immortal soul, which is self-luminous, all blissful, birthless, decayless, deathless, timeless, spaceless, thoughtless. And this individual soul is identical with the Supreme Soul. When our limiting adjuncts, the upadhis, such as the body, mind, are dissolved, when we are free from ignorance through knowledge of the imperishable soul, we see the oneness. Soul is the inner ruler. Soul is the director of the mind, prana, and the senses. Mind borrows its light from the soul. That's why they say mind is like moon. Moon borrows the light from sun. Mind borrows the light from soul. Soul is beyond the realm of physical science. Soul is beyond the reach of material science. And consciousness is evidence of the existence of the soul. So do not identify with the body. That's what rishis say. You are not the perishable body. You are the immortal soul. Identify yourself with the soul. That one of the Mahavakya, Tat Tvam Asi. Thou art that. We have to not just remember it or repeat it. We got to feel it, realize it, and be free. Tat Tvam Asi. Let's look at soul's journey after death. Because we want to know, where will we go? What will happen? The Jeev, or the individual soul, along with prans, the mind and the senses, leaves his former body and obtains a new body. This individual soul with himself, avidya, virtues, vicious actions, and the impressions left by his previous births, they all go. The soul takes with it the subtle parts of the elements, suksham bhoot, which are the seeds of the new body. So there's a lot of baggage which goes with the soul. All these elements accompany the soul. When soul departs, the chief prans depart after him. And when the chief pran departs, the other prans also depart. We are all familiar with several prans. Pran, apan, saman, udan, vyan. And then there are a lot of upaprans also. They cannot stay without the basis or the substratum or the support of the elements. So the subtle elements, which are also called tanmatras, I'm sure some of you are familiar with that term, form the base for the moving prans. There can be enjoyment only when the pran goes to another body. The essence of the elements is the vehicle of the pran. Where the elements are, there the organs and prans are. They are never separated. The soul could not enter into the new body without pran. So they are so much related to each other. The pran and the senses remain at the time of death quite inoperative for accompanying the departing soul. Another aspect of our life, which these rishis talk about it in all the scriptures, are the karma and reincarnation. Karma and rebirth are the two great pillars of Hinduism. He who does not believe in these two great truths cannot grasp the essence of Hinduism. So the phenomena of death sets the human mind to think deeply, because all philosophy springs from the phenomena of death. In a way, if you look deeper into it, the philosophy is really study of death. The highest philosophy in India starts with the subject of death. When we study Bhagavad Gita, or when we study Katha Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, death is a call to reflect and to seek the goal of truth, the eternal Brahma. Death is nothing but the change of the body. The soul throws it off like a used garment. We learned that in Bhagavad Gita. Human life is getting purged and perfected in order to attain the final bliss. And this takes place through countless births. According to Hinduism, life is one continuous, never-ending process. All change is only change of environment and the change of embodiment. The soul is immortal. It takes one form after another on account of its own karma actions. We all know Hinduism is based on two fundamental doctrines. One is the law of karma. The second is the law of transmigration. It's called a twin philosophy. And death is only a necessary and passing phenomena. Just as you move from one house to another, the soul passes from one body to another to gain experience. The soul which passes out of the body after death is called Preta. I'm sure you have heard that word before or knew that or read about it. Preta is that which is bound on its onward march to the beyond. Preta. So the soul in its disembodied form hovers over its original and familiar places for a few days. And I'm talking about most of the people. It is in the form of a ghost during these few days. It could be 10 days, 13 days, 4 days, for a little while. The soul leaves off its pretatva, or the garb of a traveler, in a year. Okay, so Jivatma stays as a pret for a year. And then it is raised to the status of Pitri, which is called ancestor. That's why in Hindu religion, we have certain rites and the rituals at the end of the year also. The first anniversary. Ancestor worship is one of the fundamental doctrines of Hinduism. There are 3 stages in the ancestral life. Father and mother, grandparents, and the great-grandparents. We should all obtain the blessings of our ancestors through performance of anniversaries and other rites and regular ancestral worship, or even keeping the pictures on the walls in our homes or in our shrine room, to feel their presence, to feel their blessings. Now, how soul departs after death? Because if the soul is the one which is living, At the time of death, when the breathing becomes difficult, the jeev or the individual self, which is in the body, goes out making noises. The passage of the self from the body varies according to the number of good actions done by the jeev and the knowledge gained by him. If a person has a good store of virtuous deeds and a relative knowledge that would take him to the sun, that means the next realm, the self leaves the body through the eye. It leaves through the head. For some people, if that person is entitled to the world of Hiranyagarbha. So it all depends where this Atma, the Jivatma, will live, from which aperture decides where it will go. If it leaves through other passages according to its past work and knowledge, the lower one, it will go to the lower realms. When the individual self departs for the next world, the vital force or prana also departs. And it carries the impressions of experiences regarding every action that is performed in the past incarnations. So that means all the vasanas, all the impressions deposited in the chit goes with it. And these impressions, these vasanas, play an active part in molding the character of the jiva in the next birth. So in other words, where we were born, what kind of a body we have, this is based upon our last impressions which were left in our chitta. And the fresh actions in the next birth are motivated by the impressions of the actions of the past life. That's why a predominantly sattvic person bringing the sattvic impressions will end up doing sattvic actions and will be placed at a sattvic place also. Knowledge, that means the jnana, work, that is the karma, and the past experiences are the three factors in deciding the future of an individual. That's why the rishis, they tell us to cultivate virtues, perform good actions, so that we may attain a desirable and agreeable body. So remember, the desire is the root cause of transmigration. We are in this human body right now because we had certain desires. Then in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna also talked about the two paths, the divine, that is like a path of the noble, and Pitriyan, where we get attached to our relatives. Do we have the divine qualities in our mind, or are we attached still at the lower realm? We always have this choice. Let's look at what Gita says on life after death. Lord said, many births have been left behind by me. By you also, O Arjun. I know them all, but you do not know. So this itself tells us that we have lived many lives. countless lives, but we don't remember them. But the yogis do. This eternal individual Jeev, the world of Jeevs, he says, is a ray of myself. And at the time of leaving the body, draws around himself the various senses. That is the sense of hearing, sense of sight, sense of touch, sense of smell, sense of taste, with the mind as a sixth sense. All these having their abode in Prakriti, that is the world of matter, as distinguished from the Purusha, who is the Paramatma. So this much detail is given in Bhagavad Gita for us to remember what will happen at the time of death. And he says light and darkness, these are thought to be the world's everlasting paths. By the one he goes who returns not. By the other, he who returns again. So if we are attached, or if we have the desires, we will come back. Those desires are the one which will bring us back. But if we are attached to that highest, we will not come back. Let's look at what Yog Vashiht says, because this is from Bhagavad Gita. We are the students of Yog Vashiht also. Over there, there's a beautiful story where the queen by the name of Leela, she asks this question. Because both the king and the queen, they lived a most ideal spiritual life, dutifully and happy in every ways. She said, tell me in short, Goddess Saraswati, because she got the boon from Goddess Saraswati. So she said, tell me in short something more with regard to death, as to whether it is happy or painful to die, and what becomes of people after they are dead and gone from here. You can see that this quest in everybody's mind. Goddess Saraswati replied, she said, dying people are of three sorts and have different results upon their death. So that means everybody will not have the same experience. It all depends upon what kind of a knowledge we have, what kind of a karma we did, and how attached we are. So she said three kinds. They are those who are ignorant. And then there are those who are versed in yoga. And then there are those who are ritualistic, religious. Those practicing the yoga, the dharana yoga, she says, may go wherever they like after leaving their bodies. Because they have a control over their mind. They may not be free yet, but mind has become their servant. And mind is the vehicle which will take us beyond. So she says, may go wherever they like after leaving their bodies. And so the reasonable yogi is at liberty to roam everywhere. But in order to reach there, we have to do abhyas. We have to have patience. Because in order to do the meditation, we need the patience and we need the endurance. A fickle mind can never do abhyas. And he who has not practiced this dharna yoga, she said dharna, because this is the first stage on this ladder. Dharna. He who has not practiced a dharna yoga nor applied himself to acquisition of knowledge, the gyan, nor has certain reservoir of virtues for the future, is called ignorant. And then ignorant will meet with the pains and penalties of death, she says. And he whose mind is uncontrolled and full of desires and worldly cares and anxieties will become distressed. As a lotus torn from its stalk. This is the example she gave. The mind that is not guided by the edicts of the Shastra, scriptures, nor purified by the holiness, but given up the society of the wicked, is subjected to the burning sensation of fire. This fire within himself at the moment of death. At the moment when the last gurgling of throat chokes the breath, the eyesight is dimmed, and your awareness fades away, then the Jivatma also becomes hazy in its intellect. A deep darkness pervades the dimming sight and then starts to twinkle before it in daylight. The sky appears to be obscured by clouds and presents a gloomy aspect. This is all from Yog Vashiht. An acute pain traverses the whole frame. The earth is turned to air, and the mid-air seems to be the habitation of the dying person. The firmament revolves before him, and the tide of the sea seems to bear him away. He is now lifted up in the air and now hurled down as in a state of a dream. Now he thinks as if he is falling in a dark pit, lying in the valley of a hill, wants to tell aloud his sufferings, but his speech fails him. He now finds himself as falling down from the sky, now is whirled in the air or wind, now riding swiftly as in a car, and now find himself melting as snow. He desires to acquaint his friends of the torments of life and this world, but he is carried away from here rapidly as by an aeroplane. He whirls about as by a rotary machine, turning wheel, and is dragged along like a beast by its halter. He is borne in the air as a straw and is carried about as a cloud by the winds. He soars high like a vapor and then falls down like a heavy watery cloud pouring out in the sea. He passes through the endless space, revolves there to find as it were a place free from changes to which the earth and the ocean are subject, place of peace and rest. By degrees, the object of his senses become as faint as his failing organs. As the landscape fades to view at the setting of the sun, he loses the memory of the past. Because sometimes we wonder, why did we lose all the memory? all of this happens that we don't remember anything. Loses the memory of the past and present, is at a loss to know the quarters. That means which direction we are going after the evening twilight has passed away. And in his fits of fainting, his mind loses its power of thinking. He is lost in a state of ignorance at the loss of all his thoughts and sensibility. And in this state of faintness, the vital breath ceases to circulate through the body at the utter stoppage of its circulation, much like a state of swooning. The last thought of a person governs his future destiny. We read that in Bhagavad Gita. Last thought. That decides our future birth. That's why Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, whosoever at the end abandoneth the body, thinking upon any being, to that being only he goes. From chapter 8. So if all that is happening, which I mentioned before, according to Yog Vashiht, there is so much has been happening. What will be our last thought? So that's why it becomes so important to practice this, whether you want to call it a dharana or dhyana or prayers or gyan, knowledge, whatever it takes to have control over our thoughts is so important. This constant practice of fixing the mind on the Lord. Although we are engaged in worldly pursuits, will definitely enable us to intuitively and automatically think of the Lord. This is the habit we need to cultivate. And habits are formed when we do something repeatedly. So if we can do it while living, doing our actions, then there's a great chance that at the time of departure, we'll think only about the Lord. The last thoughts will be the thought of God only for that person who had disciplined his mind all throughout his life and who has tried to fix the mind on the Lord through constant practice. So we need to ask ourselves a question. Are we practicing that or not? Because it cannot come by a stray practice in a day or two, in a week or a month. It is definitely a lifelong endeavor and struggle. Because worldly thoughts will come. There definitely be problems, obstacles in thinking about God and God only. So we need to practice it. And we got to remember that there's a distinction between personality and individuality. This is the knowledge we need to keep in our mind. That's why knowledge is very important. Actions are important, knowledge is important. Because many people have no clear understanding of these two terms. They get mixed up and confused personality and individuality. Some people think that personality is individuality and individuality is personality. That which distinguishes a person from a thing or one person from another is personality. Remember that. So in personality, at the level of personality, we are different. Personality in common definition refers to the body. When a person is tall, has a good complexion, beautiful features, when his face has a fine, beautiful features, we say that Mr. So-and-so has a charming personality. So it has to do with the body, the structure. When a person is able to influence others, people say that such and such a person has strong personality. When a person is timid, shy, we say that such and such person has weak personality. And we even say that he must develop a personality. Personality counts much in society for success in life, worldly success. That's why the term personality comes from the Latin word persona, the mask. So personality is that particular consciousness which concerns the physical body. Hunger, thirst, physical beauty, black or red color, height, stature, anger, all the limitations of the body relate to the personality. When we say he is a sannyasi, he is a scholar, he is a businessman, doctor, all these concern the personality. This is the mask which the person is putting on now. Death destroys the personality, but it cannot annihilate the individuality. Individuality is a separate, has distinct existence. It is something which is beyond the body. It has no relation to your personality at all. That's why it's called the sense of I. That is individuality. It is like a continuous current. It is the continuity of the one thought, the thought of I. All other thoughts are centered around this I. I was a girl. I became a woman. I ate, I spoke, I meditated, I came to America. The same I has gone through all these experiences. I is the dweller in this body. I is the same in childhood, youth, and old age. Personality changes, but your individuality, the sense of I, can never change. Because the sense of I will continue to exist with you, even in the beyond. After leaving the body, the sense of I continues to exist. So if somebody says, what remains after the death of the body? This individuality, this I. So after death, you take the sense of I with you. Actually, even in dream, you have the sense of I within. Even in the deep sleep, you have the sense of I. If you have not got the sense of I in deep sleep, you would not remember that you slept happily. That sense of I is there. But the sense of I, yogis say, that you have to lose. That is the goal. And you can lose this individuality by becoming one with the Supreme Self, Parabrahma. How? Through Nirvikalp Samadhi. No Vikalp left. If there's no mind, there's no Vikalp. That's a Nirvikalp Samadhi. Just as the water in the pot becomes one with the ocean when the pot is broken, so also the individuality becomes one with the infinity when the ignorance is destroyed. When the idea of a separateness is annihilated through knowledge, which is also called Brahma Gyan. And this is what these prime scriptures give us, the Brahma Gyan. So I hope you can see clearly the difference between the personality and the individuality also. Because in order to understand this topic of death, this is very important to know. What dies? What happens at the time of death? How important our knowledge of all this, and how important the practice of remembering the God, not just the name of God, the feeling of God. Because name will drop down, but the feeling will remain. And this is what we need to practice. So I'm sure you have more questions about this deep topic. You can always send me the questions, and maybe in future we can talk a little bit more about it. But I gave you in these 3 different classes some of the answers of some of the questions on this topic. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Viseshyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much for joining.